Let's work on a crochet spiderweb blanket. For this blanket, I will be using Red Heart Super Saver yarn in the color Soapstone. And I will be using a 6mm crochet hook. Let's get started. I am going to start with a magic circle. And I will chain 3. I love stitch markers, so I am going to mark that 3rd chain, and this will count as my first double crochet. I will add 11 more double crochets for a total of 12 into the magic green. Now I will pull that tail and pull that magic green closed. And I will slip stitch where I marked that 3rd chain. Another easy way to tell instead of counting up is to look at this first double crochet. That's the top of that stitch, and then just go to the next one. And I will just slip stitch to close that up. So for the next round, I'm going to chain 3, and then I'm going to make a double crochet in that same space. Again, I just like to put stitch markers just because. So now we are going to increase into each stitch around, which means that I will put 2 double crochets into each stitch. So I will go around and put 2 into every stitch, and I will end up at the end of this round with 24 double crochets. So just make sure that you have 24 double crochets, and then I'm going to slip stitch into the top of that chain. So now I will chain 3. So I am going to skip this next one, and in the next stitch I am going to put a double crochet, a chain 2, and a double crochet back into that same stitch. So I'm making like a little V stitch. We will finish up this when we come back around. And so we will continue that around. I will skip a stitch, and then I will do a V stitch in the next, which is a double crochet, chain 2, and a double crochet in that same stitch. And I will continue that around. Skip 1, double crochet in the next, chain 2, and double crochet in that same stitch. So I'm back around to the end. I finished my last V stitch. So now I would need to skip this last stitch, and I need to finish off this V. So we've done half of it. That chain counts as that 2nd double crochet in a V stitch. So I need to make 1 double crochet into that same space. And this is where we slip stitch, so it might be a little bit harder to get into there, but you just do a double crochet. I need to chain 2, and now I need to slip stitch into the top of that 3rd chain. Give it a little pull, and that will finish off the V stitch. So here is the chain. We worked all the way around and came back and finished that up. So let's start round 4. To start round 4, I am going to slip stitch into this next chain space that is on top of our little V-stitch. So I will just put my hook into that space and make a slip stitch, and this just gets my yarn and my hook over this space, which is where we need to start. The directions call for chaining 3, just like we've done down here, to make a double crochet. But from now on, I am, instead of chaining 3, I am going to just make a single crochet and a chain 1, and that is going to count as my first double crochet. You don't have to do that. You can just chain 3 and that will count as your double crochet. I just like to do that so it looks a little bit beefier, kind of like a normal stitch instead of just a chain. But that's total personal preference. So you would either chain 3 or do a standing double crochet, whatever you want to make that first double crochet. Then I will make another in that same chain space. So I have 2 double crochets. I'm going to chain 2, and I'm going to make 2 more double crochets into that same space. And so this is a corner that we're making. This round has 2 double crochets, a chain 2, and 2 double crochets. I will continue that around into every V-stitch, not in between the V-stitches, but in the actual chain space that makes up the V-stitches. So our V-stitches from the last round were the double crochet, chain 2, and a double crochet, and that is our V-stitch. So in each one of these V-stitches, and it's easy to tell if you just pull them apart that those double crochets come out of the same stitch. I don't want to go into this space where sometimes you might confuse that with the chain space, but you can tell there are no stitches coming out of that. So I want to look for the actual V and work into that space. And so I will do the same thing. I will make 2 double crochets, a chain 2, and 2 double crochets all into that chain 2 space. So this will start to become our corners. These little 2 chain spaces, that will start becoming the peak of our corner. So here is our next V, and I will make 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets back into that same space. And I will continue all the way around. In every V-stitch, I will do a corner. So at the end of this round, you should have 12 of these little corners. And what I will do is I will slip stitch to that top of my double crochet, and here are the little peaks that we made, and you should have 12. Now for round 5, I am going to slip stitch into the next stitch. So I slip stitched into the top of this first of that 2 of the corner. I want to slip stitch into the double crochet that's right before those 2 chains, and that will get me in the right spot. So you can do your chain 3 for a double crochet. Again, I am just going to make a single crochet and a chain 1, and I'll mark that chain 1 so I know exactly where I need to slip stitch when I come back around, and that counts as my first double crochet. Now I need to go into that corner that we just made, that chain 2 space, and I need to make another corner. So the corner is exactly what we did in the round before. So in that space, I will make 2 double crochets, a chain 2, and 2 more double crochets all in that space. So you can see that this corner, and it's going to become more pronounced as we continue, but the round below had the 2 double crochets, the chain 2 and the 2 double crochets, and this is directly over. So I have 2 chain 2 and 2 directly over that previous corner. The only difference in this round is I'm going to have 1 more double crochet before that corner and 1 double crochet after the corner. And that'll become a little bit more clear in just a second. So now that I have 2 double crochets coming down, this is going to be the valley of our little star. We're going to have the corners out here, and then it's going to be the valley. Because I have 2, I need to work a double crochet into this first double crochet after the corner, so that I will have 3 going up to the point and 3 coming down, just like on this side. So I finished my corner, and I'm going to make 1 in this very first double crochet. So now you can see that this round is going to have 3 double crochets before that peak of the chain 2, and then 3 on the way down. So once I come to this bottom, you'll notice that there is a stitch that comes from the corner on the right side, which is right here. And then the next corner will have a stitch at the bottom. These 2 are going to be skipped. We are not going to work into these 2 from here on out. They will always be skipped, and that's what makes the valley of the star. So I will skip those 2, and I need to work a double crochet into this next double crochet. Now I'm back to that peak of the corner, so I need to make another corner, which is 2 double crochets, a chain 2, and 2 more double crochets in that same space. So there's the peak of our star. And now I need to add 1 double crochet into the next stitch. Now sometimes when you make this peak, your stitch may kind of cover up this top of the stitch that you need to work into. So you might have to pull this back a little bit, but it's always this first double crochet that we're going to work into. So I will make 1 double crochet. So again, this is 3 before we hit the peak. That chain 2 is our peak, and then 3 down. And then here's our bottom 2 that we skip. So we skip, skip, and I need to work 1 double crochet in that next double crochet, and then I'm back to the peak of the corner. So I need to do a corner, which is 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets all into that same space. And then need to make 1 double crochet into that next stitch. That brings me to the bottom. Again, we're always skipping the last double crochet on the right and the first double crochet on the left. We are always skipping those 2 spaces, those 2 stitches. So I'll skip, skip. So now I need to do 1 double crochet into the next. That brings me back to the peak of this corner. So I will make another corner, which is the 2 double crochets, chain 2 and 2 double crochets in that same space. And then I need to kind of pull that back if I need to, do 1 double crochet into the next stitch. And on our next round, I'm going to show you that you will be able to make this blanket as big or as small as you want, because you won't even need a pattern. It's very simple, and but it becomes a little bit more apparent on the next round, kind of what we're doing. So here we're at the bottom, so we need to skip those 2, and I'll make 1 double crochet in that stitch, and then I'm back to the peak. So I need to make my corner, which is 2 double crochets, chain 2 and 2 double crochets, and then I need to make 1 in the very next stitch. So you can kind of see that our valleys and our peaks are getting a little bit more pronounced with this round. So I will continue. I will skip these 2 because they're the very bottom. And you can see that they're in different parts. They're not, coming out of the same stitch. So you know that you're at the very bottom. And they kind of lean into each other. Those 2 that lean into each other is what we're skipping every time. So then I will continue with skipping these 2, doing a double crochet, doing a corner or a peak, which is 2 double crochets, 2 chains and 2 double crochets into this space. Then I will do a double crochet into this next stitch and just repeat. Skip these 2 that lean together, then do a double crochet into that next, and then repeat with the corner. So I'm going to finish and meet you back at the very beginning. So I'm back to the start, and you can see now it's a little bit more pronounced, and it will get even a little bit more in the next round or 2. So I have finished off with 1 last double crochet. And then here I am back at these 2 bottoms that lean together. So of course I skip those, and I will just slip stitch into my double crochet, or it's probably your chain 3. And so that is round 5. Now round 6 was kind of where you can see the pattern begin, and you don't even really need a pattern from here. There's going to be a couple of changes coming up, but they are super easy. And again, you don't even really need a pattern. So let's see what happens now. So I'm at this bottom because I just slip stitched into this first double crochet, but remember, we have always skipped those first single crochet, or those first double crochets at the end. So I need to slip stitch over to this next one. So I will slip stitch. If you are going to, let's say, do stripes and you want different, bandings of colors, and you want to tie off, you can just go ahead and tie off, and then you would take your new color of yarn and go into that, not the bottom because we always skip those 2, but you would come into that next stitch. And as we work, of course, there's going to be more and more stitches. So now on this round, you'll notice instead of just 2 going up and 2 coming down, we have those 3 because we did the corners, 2 chain, and then 2, and then we did 1, and then we did 1. And so we end up with 3 now on each side of this peak. We need to work into all of those except the very first one or the very last one. Again, we always skip those 2 that lean together, but we will always work into any other stitches before or after those. So now I've slip stitch over, so I'm coming out of the second double crochet because I've skipped this one because I've slip stitched. So I, again, am going to make a single crochet and a chain. You could just chain 3. It's the same thing. But now you'll notice that I have an additional stitch to work into before I get to the peak. So I will just do a double crochet. So now on this round, we are going to have 2 double crochets before we do the corner. The last round we had 1 before the corner, so 3 total. So when I do my corner, which is 2 double crochets, and then a chain 2, and 2 more double crochets in that same space, you'll notice now I have 4 double crochets leading up to the peak of that corner. So now coming down, remember sometimes this first stitch gets hidden, so you might have to pull this back. Now I need to work, I need to work down before I skip these bottom 2. Remember, the bottom 2 that lean together are the only stitches that we skip. So now I have 2 stitches to work into before I get to the bottom. So I will make a double crochet into those next 2 stitches. Here's the bottom, the last of this side and the first of this side, they lean together. I will skip those. And now you can see that I'll have 2 leading up to the corner. So I will jump to this one and I will make a double crochet into the next stitch. And now I've reached my corner. So I will make 2 double crochets, a chain 2, and 2 double crochets into that space, which is the corner. I need to make these 2. I need to do stitches into the next 2, so pull that back if you need to. Make 1 double crochet in the next stitch, 1 double crochet in the next. That brings me to the bottom, so we skip those bottom 2 that lean together, and then work in the rest of the stitches on the way up, which in this round there will be 2 that we make before we hit that corner. So I'll make a corner, which is 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 more double crochets in that same space. Now we're working our way down. So we're at the peak and we're working our way down. So I work in each of the next 2 stitches. That brings me to that last stitch and the first stitch on this side that lean together. And those leaning together stitches are the ones that we skip. And then I will just continue around. Double crochet in the next, double crochet in the next. It brings me to the corner. I will do 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 more double crochets in that same space or in that same corner. And then I'm ready to head downhill. So I will make 1 in the next stitch, 1 in the next stitch. That brings me to the bottom 2 that lean together. So I will skip, and then work my way back up. 1 double crochet, 1 in the next, and I'm back to my next corner. So those ones that we skip, we just skipped these 2. When you make your double crochet into the one after, that's what makes those lean together and become the little valley. So I'm going to finish this and I'll meet you at the start. So I have finished this round and I just finished my last double crochet, and you can see the next stitch is this one that leans in. And so again, I skip those 2 and I will slip stitch to where I put my stitch marker, and that will finish up this round. I always give a little tug on my stitch, on my slip stitch, just to kind of tighten that up. So now, this is how we will work this entire pattern with one minor change, but you will always, no matter what, you will always skip these bottom 2 stitches. The double crochets lean in together and it's easy to tell which ones to skip. Because I'm making the spiderweb blanket, I am going to be adding a row of single crochets every once in a while with black, and it's not quite as easy to tell which ones to skip, but I'll show you kind of a hint that I use. But with that in mind, we always skip these bottom 2. So now you can see that we will have more to work in before we get to skip these. So for example, when I'm working into this, I will do my corner and then I will have this first, second, and now a third stitch before I skip. And so that's why I said that this is an easy pattern that you don't even need to really refer to the pattern after this. You will work a corner and then you will just work double crochets into however many double crochets, or in my case, I'm also adding a single crochet until you get to that bottom. You will always skip the bottom 2 no matter what. So eventually, right now we have 3 to work in before we skip. Well then, you know, pretty soon we're gonna have 8 and 9 that will work up to the peak all the way down until we skip. And so you just work in however many stitches you have until that last stitch of the valley. So now with that being said, this is where the pattern changes slightly. And the only way that it changes is the corner. And so let me kind of walk you through the repeat of this pattern. So I just finished round 6 and now I am starting round 7. Now round 7, 8, and 9 will be the repeating rounds. And there's no difference in the stitches that you work into. Only the corner is going to be different, and it will only be different on the first of those 3 rounds. Now, some patterns will say to repeat round 7, because we've done 6, 7, 8, 9, 7, 8, 9, 7, 8, 9. I kind of look at it like I did my setup rounds, and now I have sets of 3 rounds that will be my repeat. So I tend to think of these as rounds 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, and 3. And the only difference is in round 1. All right, so with rounds, I'm going to call 1, 2, and 3. Those are our repeat rounds. They start the same. If you're using the same color of yarn, you have slip stitched into this bottom double crochet, which we are going to skip. So I would need to slip stitch over to the second. And if you're using the same color, you will always slip stitch over to the next one, and then, you know, chain 3 for the double crochet, and then work a stitch and work a stitch, and then you'll be to your corner. Now this is considered, for me, round 1. And so the only difference is that instead of 2 stitches, a chain 2 and 2 stitches, round 1 will be 1 stitch, chain 2, 1 stitch. Everything else is the same. So I get to the next one, it would be 1 stitch, 2 chains, and 1 stitch. That is just because if we were to add every corner 2 stitches, 2 chains, and 2 stitches, it would add too many stitches and it would start to be ripply. And so to combat that, out of those 3 repeat rows, 1, 2, and 3, the first round only has 1 in the corner on each side. So 1 stitch, 2 chains, and 1 stitch. Then round 2, we will be back to 2 stitches, a chain 2, and 2 stitches. Finish that off. Round 3 will be 2 stitches in the corner, chain 2, 2 stitches. Then the next round will be back to round 1. It would just be 1 stitch, 2 chains, and 1 stitch. So I hope that that makes sense. Now, the reason I'm saying stitches instead of double crochets is because I'm going to add every once in a while a round of single crochets. Now, this is because it's a spider web, and so I want black every once in a while just to kind of highlight the web look. And so for me, I'm going to start that first round of black right now with my first row of the repeat. So I've slip stitched and I've ended this. Now, right now I'm going to tie off so I can show you if you're, let's say, doing band of colors. Let's say you're doing a rainbow blanket and you want, you know, different colors, you know, every 3 or 4 rounds or every 3 rounds to do the repeats, or however you want to do it. This is how you will do it. From now on, when I do my round of black, I will leave my gray attached, and I'll show that on the next time. But for now, I have slip stitched, so I am just going to chain 1. I'm going to cut off so that I can weave that in, and I will just snug that little knot down. Now, I am changing to black. Again, this could be any color that you want, you know, kind of a stripe effect. And I'll put my slip stitch on my hook. Now, because if I would not have changed colors, I would have slip stitched to the second double crochet, I am just going to start in that. There's no point in starting where I ended and then slip stitching over. So I hope that makes sense. So if you're changing colors, you will always start in that second from the bottom, because we always want to skip those bottom 2 stitches. So here is the second, and the way I like to do mine is I put my slip knot onto my hook first, and most people don't do this, but I'll show you why I do it in a second. I'm going to grab the yarn, bring it through, and keep the slip stitch plus the one I just brought through. So I have 2 stitches, and I will, since this is a single crochet, I will just finish off that single crochet, and that becomes my first stitch because this is a single crochet row. So I will go ahead and mark this because, again, I love stitch markers, and I don't ever have to wonder where, you know, I have to attach my slip stitch at the end. Now, if this, if you were not doing a single crochet, you know, none of this would matter because you would still be attached to your seam, and you would just do your, you know, chain 3, or like me, I would have done this and then done 1 more chain to equal my double crochet. But since I'm on a black round, I will do single crochets. So now I'm in that second stitch. So now I just need to make a stitch into each of the next 2. And again, I'm just doing single crochets on this round. If you are not doing a spider web blanket and you're just continuing, these would be all double crochets. The only reason I'm doing the single crochets instead is because I don't want, you know, the big black double crochets. I want this to look a little bit smaller for the spider web. So I've worked up the side, and now I'm to my corner. So again, this is the first of our 3 round repeat, and so this gets only 1, and I can close that. This gets 1 stitch. For me, it's a single crochet, chain 2, and 1 stitch. So that's the only difference, and I know the black is kind of hard to see. Now, what I'm going to do, and I will do this every 3 rounds for the rest of my blanket, because to just preface that, my black stitches aren't necessarily always going to fall on a row 1. It might be that it's a row 2 or row 3, and I might have 2 singles, 2 chains, 2 singles. So I always mark my first of those 3 rows. So I will just mark the post, so I know for me that this black row is round 1, so it only has 1 stitch in each side of the corner. And that's another way to remember it. The first row, or row 1, has 1 stitch, chain 2, 1 stitch. So that's an easy way to remember it. Now, everything else is exactly the same. So I'm going to move that out of the way. I need to go down into every single stitch except for those bottom that lean together. So I will put a single crochet. Again, if you're not doing a spider web and you're just doing a regular star, these would be double crochets. So I've worked all the way down. I'm now at my last stitch that leans together. So I will skip, and then I will start in this next stitch, and I will go up until I hit the corner. So in this case, I have 3 going up. So I will do a single in each of those, and remember, I'm on round 1. I marked it. So I do 1, in my case, a single, chain 2, and 1. And then I work in each stitch down until that last stitch. So I skip this stitch and this stitch that lean together, and then I will work my single crochets up. In this case, it's 3, and I'm back to the corner. So I'm on round 1, so I will do 1 single, 2 chains, 1 single, and work my way down. 2, 3, I skip, and then work up. 1, 2, 3. I'm in a corner in round 1, so I'll do 1 stitch, chain 2, 1 stitch. Now, also, just a note is that no matter what corner, you're always doing chain 2. So it's either 1 stitch, chain 2, 1 stitch, or it will be 2 stitch, chain 2, 2 stitch. So the chains never change. So then I will work down into every stitch except for that last, which is in this case 3. I will skip, and then I will work up 3. So of course, however many you work down is what you work up, just to make sure that you're, haven't missed one. And the one that is most likely to be missed is this first one after the corner, especially when you have 2 stitches. It sometimes covers that top of that stitch up. So I'm back to a corner, so I'll work 1 single crochet, 2 chains, and 1 single crochet. And then I'll work down. 1, 2, and 3. I'm at the bottom where those 2 lean together. Skip, and then I'll work 3 up. 1, 2, 3. In the corner again, 1 stitch, 2 chains, and 1 stitch. Then I'll work down 1, 2, 3, and then I skip these 2. So I will continue that all the way around. Okay, so I was coming around, and it's kind of just natural for me to count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And I came down and I only have 2 stitches before I got to the bottom. And so if I look back here on the row below, you can see that I skipped that one that I tell you sometimes gets hidden, and I wasn't paying attention that I didn't have 4 coming down like I did. And so that's what happens when you accidentally miss that, and I wasn't apparently paying attention. So I should have 4 stitches and then 4 up. And so instead of taking all of this out, because I'm short now a single crochet because I'm missing a stitch, I am just going to make 2 into this stitch. It's not the most ideal, but it's, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world. So because I missed a stitch here, I needed to do an increase to make up so that I have my 1, 2, 3 single crochets like I do everywhere else. And so it's not, again, the end of the world. Now, if you miss a lot or a lot on the same row, it's probably best to take it out. If you miss one once in a while, it's okay. So I am adding a second where I don't have the stitch because I missed it. So now I'm down to the 2, and so I'll skip those and I will continue. So let me work up, and that's why sometimes it is good to just count, because if I wouldn't have been counting, you know, I wouldn't have, you know, probably paid attention. I mean, I wouldn't have really noticed. So you can see that it's fine, and it's, you know, it's a blanket, it's going to be used, but that's how I needed to overcome me having one less stitch that I forgot. All right, so now I'm going to continue and finish up. All right, so I'm back to the bottom. These last 2, of course, that I skip. And now here is where my stitch marker comes in handy because it's really easy to see. And I will slip stitch into that first single crochet that I made. And I will chain 1. And now I am going to cut that black off because it's going to be several rounds before I do the black. So I'm going to leave this stitch marker on round 1 of my 3 rows, because if I need to stop for whatever reason and I, you know, don't want to have to like go back, especially with the black, sometimes it's hard with the single crochets. It's super easy to say, oh, here's my row 1. I did the next row, so now I'm on, you know, round 3 of the repeat, or, you know, whatever. So I always mark that because you never know, and it's just easier, to be honest. All right, so because I was able to cut off, now I want to bring my gray yarn back. I will do a slip stitch and put that on to my hook. I'm going to, again, leave that one. So this last one right here that I just slip stitched into is that bottom one that we skip. So I will add my yarn to the second one. So anytime you're changing yarn, you will add it to that second stitch in, because we always skip that bottom. Now I will pull through. I will have 2 on my hook, and I will finish that single crochet, and then I will chain 1, because if I'm working in gray, it's always going to be double crochets. So now I will work in each stitch till I get to the corner. Now, normally, you know, this will increase by 1, but because we didn't add the second single crochet, I'm still going to be working 3 up because I didn't add that second one in. I hope that makes sense. So I did 1 double crochet. I'll do a double crochet in the next, and a double crochet in the next. That brings me to my corner. So again, I've already done row 1, so I'm on round 2. So this round 2 and 3 will have 2 stitches. This happens to be double crochet, 2 chains, and 2 double crochets, or 2 single crochets if you're on, you know, a black round. So now it's exactly the same. So I'm going to go down. It will be 3 stitches down. And see this again, so you can tell that it's not quite as easy to see which ones you skip. So you just need to kind of pay attention and make sure that you're working the same amount up and down the peaks as you did on the black row, and then you'll know that you're in the right. So I know that I skip, and then I will come back and I will do 3 double crochets up. And then in my corner, I will do the 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. Let me finish off this round and we will do round 3 of our 3-row repeat. So I've come back around and I am ready to slip stitch to my first double crochet. And remember, I'll skip those bottom 2 stitches. And I am going to keep the gray on my hook, so I need to slip stitch over to the next stitch. And that will just get me started in this second stitch so that I can skip this when I come back around. Again, to start, I am going to make a single crochet and a chain, and that will count as my double crochet. So here, this black row was our row 1 or our round 1. This was round 2, so now I'm on round 3 of the 3-row repeat. So I will work up into all of the stitches up till I get to the corner or to the peak of the star. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4. And now I am ready to do my peak or my corner. It's round 3, and so I will do the same as I did in round 2, which is 2 double crochets, 2 chains, and 2 double crochets, all in that space. And then I will work down, forgetting not to skip that very first one. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm at the bottom, so I will skip those 2 that lean together and work my way up, which should be 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now I'm ready to repeat those steps. So I will do the 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets in that same space. And then I will work the 4 stitches down. I will skip these bottom 2 that lean together. I will work 4 up, and I will just continue. And that is round 3. I'll meet you back at the start. So I finished round 3. I'm back to the bottom 2 that I need to skip. And I will slip stitch into the top of my double crochet. Yours might be a chain 3. So here, this black round, remember, was round 1, round 2, and round 3. So now we need to repeat starting with round 1. Again, the round 1, the only difference is the number that go into the corner. Instead of the 2, chain 2 and 2, it would just be 1 stitch, chain 2 and 1. But I am going to keep the gray. I want my next black round to be a little bit wider. So I am going to keep my gray. And because I'm keeping the gray, I need to slip stitch into this next stitch. And again, I'm slip stitching because this stitch that I slip stitched in and was the first will be one that I skip when I come back around. So now I am on round 1 of our 3-round repeat. I am using gray, so I'm still going to be double crocheting. So I will do a single crochet and a chain. And that's what I use as my double crochet. You can chain 3. And I will continue. I will put a double crochet in each of the stitches up to that point. So in this round, it's going to be 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, before we get to the peak or the corner. Now, since this is round 1, I am going to take my stitch marker out, and I am now going to add it to the post of this round, so that again, it's easy to tell where my repeat starts. So I'm at the corner, so it's round 1. So I will do 1 double crochet, chain 2, and 1 double crochet into that corner. That's the only difference in round 1. So now I will continue. I will do a double crochet in the next 5 stitches. So there's 2, 3, 4, and 5. That brings me to those bottom that lean in together. I will skip, and then I will work 5 double crochets. And to my next peak, I will do 1 double crochet, chain 2, and 1 double crochet into that same space. And then I will continue doing 5 down, skipping these 2, 5 up, and then 1 double crochet, chain 2, 1 double crochet, and I will do that around. And so this is, again, I've marked it so I always know. It's easy to tell that I'm on round 1 of our 3-round repeat. So let me finish this round up and I'll show you what we're going to do next. I'm back to the start. I will skip these last 2 stitches and I will slip stitch into the top of my double crochet. Could be a chain 3. And then that finishes our first row of this repeat. So now I've decided that I want 3 rows of gray between this row of black and the next row. So I am ready to put my black yarn in. So I will put a slip knot onto my yarn, my black yarn. And I mentioned this earlier that I am not going to be cutting my yarn from now on. I cut it when I was showing the first time, but that leaves a lot of ends to tie in, and I didn't want this to be too confusing. But from now on, when I add black, I am not going to be cutting my gray yarn. So I am just going to pull a loop, and I am going to put a stitch marker so that that doesn't get pulled out. And I'll show you how to do that when we come back around. So now I need to get my black yarn attached and get ready to do the next round. So once I have my slip knot, I will put that onto my hook. And remember, when I change yarn, I need to start into the second stitch, because we're going to be skipping the last stitch that we just slip stitched into. So I will join my yarn in that second stitch. I have 2 on my hook, and I will finish that single crochet. I will put a stitch marker because I love stitch markers, and that is my first stitch. Now, anytime I do a black round, it will be a single crochet, no matter if it's on row 1, 2, or 3 of my repeat. So I will make single crochets up until I get to the peak of the corner. So I have 5, and remember, this will be the same as the row before because we did just 1 stitch on each side of the corner, and so it did not add an extra stitch. But we've already done round 1, so this round 2 needs 2 stitches. So I will do 2 single crochets, a chain 2, and 2 single crochets in that same space. And then I will work my way down, making 5 single crochets, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That brings me to the bottom. I will skip, and then work 5 single crochets up to that next peak. And in this corner, again, we're on round 2, so I need 2 single crochets, chain 2, and 2 single crochets in that corner. And then I will continue exactly the same. Now, if I wanted, I could have put my black row on this row 1 so that there would only be 1 single crochet, 2 chains, and 1 single crochet. But I didn't want mine that close together. And so it doesn't matter what row or what round you're on when you do the black, you follow whether it's round 1 to do the 1 single, 2 chain, 1 single, or if it's a round 2 or 3, it's exactly the same, just in single crochets, but those rounds would have 2 chains and 2 single crochets. So I hope that that makes sense. So again, I have my round 1 marked. This will be round 2, of course. And then when I come back around, I'll show you how we change back since I didn't tie off this yarn, and how we'll continue for the 3rd round for this repeat. I also wanted to mention that don't forget that sometimes this first stitch, when you're doing the 2 stitches on each side of the chain, sometimes this gets covered up and you can't forget to work into that stitch. So you may need to pull those 2 back a little bit to not forget that stitch as you're working down. All right, let's finish up this row. So I am coming around to the end of this round 2. I have my piece or my yarn that is still attached, and I'm going to make sure that that's hanging off to the back. I am going to skip these bottom 2 again, and you might, have to pull that a little, snug it up a little bit, and I will slip stitch into that first single crochet, which is that first black stitch. Give it a little tug, and I will chain 1, and I will cut this off to weave in later. So here's round 1 and here's round 2. So now, since I am going to be bringing my gray back, anytime, remember when you change colors, you always go into that second stitch because we're always skipping this bottom stitch. Well, I still have this attached, so I'm just going to take the stitch marker out, make sure that this black yarn is in the back. I will insert my hook into that second stitch, and I am just going to grab this loop that is attached to my gray yarn, and I'm going to slip it over my hook and just bring it through. And then you can tell it's, much too long, so I'm just going to kind of snug it down. And then I'm going to chain 1 to kind of secure that. And that's not counting as my stitch yet, so I'm still in the second stitch. So I am going to make a single crochet and a chain, and that's what I do for my double crochets. However, again, you can just go ahead and do 3 chains. And in the back, you can see that there's this little piece that comes up, but honestly, by the time this all comes around, I'm not worried about that little piece of gray over the black. If you are, you could just go ahead and cut, your gray yarn at the end of the round, and you'll just have more ends to weave in. I would rather have less ends, and I'm going to show you what that looks like when we're done. To me, it's worth doing and not having to weave in, but that's just total personal preference. So now, again, this is row 1 or round 1. Round 2, so I'm on round 3 of our 3 round repeat. So and I'm back to gray, so I am doing double crochets. So I will make double crochets up to the corner, and this time I should have 6 double crochets before I get to my corner. So I have, the first double crochet or the first chain count, so that's 2, 4, 6, so I know I'm on track. And in this space between those single crochets in that chain space, I am going to make 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. And then again, don't let this cover up and think that that's not a stitch to work in. I need to work into that stitch, so I need to pull that back a little bit if I need to. And I will work 6 double crochets down. There's 3, 4, 5, and 6. That brings me to the bottom where I'm going to skip those 2 at the bottom, and then I will just make double crochets again, 6 up till I get to the peak. And because I am on round 3, I need to do the 2 double crochets, then a chain 2, there's 1 and 2, chain 2, and 2 more double crochets in that peak or in that corner. So here's this repeat is round 1, round 2, and round 3. So I just want to again say that on round 1, we just do the 1 stitch, 2 chain, and 1 stitch. And it doesn't matter if I'm using gray and doing double crochets or if I'm doing black. It matters on what round that you're doing that. So it could be a double crochet round and it could be a single crochet a single crochet round like it was down here. So this is round 3. I will finish round 3, and then again I will start round 1 again. I will move my stitch marker up when I start that round and do 1, 2, and 3. And instead of making my next black round only 3 gray rounds apart, I am going to do 6. So I will have a much larger area before I get to my next black round. So I'm going to finish my gray out until I'm ready to put my next round of black. So I have the next several rounds done, and I first want to point out that you would just use 1 stitch marker, and every time you started round 1, you would just move that stitch marker up. You wouldn't you know, keep this many. I'm just doing this to kind of show you how the repeats go. And that's mostly just because we have added a single crochet round every once in a while. So when you start the blanket again, you would do the first 6 rounds like any other star blanket, and then the repeat starts in round 7. Again, the pattern calls to repeat round 7, 8, and 9, 7, 8, and 9, etc. I like to think of it as rounds 1, 2, and 3. So here you can see that I had a black round on round 1, and then I had round 2 and 3 in gray. I had round 1, the next set of repeating rounds I had in gray, and then round 2 I had as a black round, and round 3 I have gone back to gray. So I have decided to have 3 gray rounds, which are double crochets, between these first 2 single crochet black rounds. You can do it however you want, however many you want. You could do it every 3 and have a black single crochet round, or just randomly. It doesn't really matter. Then after this first set of 3 gray rounds between the black, I decided to double that and do 6. So I have 6 rounds of gray before my next black. And then I will repeat that. I will do 3 gray rounds and then another single crochet black, and then 6, and then another round of black. And I will just keep going until my star blanket is as big as I want, and I'll let you know how many I do of each. So right now, so you can see this last was round 1 and 2 and ended up on round 3. So I'm now ready to start that repeat again. I will start with my gray that I left attached, and I will start double crochets, and I will attach it into the second stitch because I'm starting a new color, and I will just keep repeating this pattern. So this first round, once I start, I will take all of these out, of course, and I will just mark that so I know that that's round 1, and I will just have in the corner 1 double crochet, 2 chains, and 1 double crochet. I will just keep following those 3 rounds over and over until my blanket's as big as I want. I did want to show that, again, you don't have to leave your yarn attached. You can, you know, tie off, but it's just less ends to have to weave in. And you can see right here is where I left that last when I started the gray, and it's just, you know, 1 little stitch that goes over the block. This is the back of the blanket. I don't mind that, and you know, this blanket, I don't even think you're going to be able to tell. It's going to be used, but again, that can be cut like I did originally down here. And so I had these 2 where I started and ended, And so that won't cross over, but then that's two more yarn tails that I need to sew in. So anyways, however you want to do that. So I will continue on with this pattern, and when I'm done, I'll show you how we finish off with some details to make this even more like a spider web. So I've worked some more rounds, and if you look at my blanket, here were my original 6 rounds, and I started the 7th where I started my rows 1, 2, and 3 repeat. And so the way I did my blanket, you know, the 3 rounds of gray between the black, and then the 6 rounds of gray, and then 3, and then 6, and then I did one more round of the 3 gray. So I'm finishing my last round of black to finish this blanket off. And the only thing that I'm doing different is that once I get to a corner or to the peak of the star, instead of doing the normal stitches with the chain, I am just going to do 3 single crochets, because that's, you know, I'm incorporating the single crochets. And so I will do 3 into that corner to kind of finish it off. And so that's the only thing that I've done different. And I'm doing that because I like the kind of the roundedness, and then I am actually going to put pom-poms on these corners, and so I kind of want them a little bit more dense instead of a chain in the corner. Other than that, I've just still put a stitch into each. You can see how many now I have down one peak, and then I still will skip these 2. Everything else is exactly the same except for 3 go into the corner. So let me finish this up, and I'll show you how I'm finishing this blanket. So I'm ready to add the surface crochet along the peak to the center, and then of course across to the other side. So I will be doing it down this way. I will not be doing it into the valley, only into the peaks. And so I'm going to start in the center. You could start on, you know, one peak on this side and work all the way across, which is what I did with my first blanket. But I think I'm going to start from the center this time. And in order to do surface crochet, you need your yarn on the underside. So I brought the yarn up. And what I need to look for is I need to look for this right here that goes to the peak, and I will just be putting my hook down, aiming for this spot right here. I will grab the yarn and pull it up. It's basically like a slip stitch, but it needs to be super loose because most of these rows are double crochet, and so that's a long area to just do, you know, a slip stitch or the surface crochet. And we want to make sure it's loose enough so that it doesn't pull in the blanket. So then again, I'm heading for this area. So you can see I've pulled up quite a large loop. And you can kind of gauge, I'm gonna kind of pull the loop to where I need to put it down. So it's that long. I'll put my hook down and grab the yarn and bring it through. I'll pull up a loop because I'm going to go across this big space. I'll go down to the other side, so I've pulled the loop long enough for my hook to go straight down and pull it up, and I'm doing it very loose. So I'll pull a loop. I'm going to go to this side. Pull up a loop and just follow So you can see that we're going to add just this line of black all the way to this peak. So I will continue that and I will show you what I'm going to do at the ends. So I've come to the end, and for right now, I am not gonna tie off. I still have my yarn, you know, underneath that I've been working from, and I'm just going to make a slip stitch and then just gonna pull this through. And you can see I have a lot left over. And I'm just gonna leave it like that. I'm going to use this to tie on my pom-pom, but I also, before I, knot that and add the pom-pom, I want to be able to lay my blanket down and make sure that it's not, tight. If it is, it's super easy to take out. Let's say if I feel it's a little tight right here, I can just pull this and it comes out easy. And then I can say, okay, I want to go a little bit looser. And let me show you a close-up. So I have the loop. I'll go down into the next area and I will just pull up the yarn. And just make it loose. Again, I'm to the end, so I'll just go over the corner. And I'm not gonna cinch it down or anything right now until I have the whole blanket done. But now you can see that there is this definition of the spider web. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to here, figure out which peak is across, which you don't really have to. The next one that I could work, up this peak, but I want to, work a peak out, and then I will leave a long piece of yarn on each end to tie on the pom-poms. So I will just continue this line and go straight across up to this next peak, and then I will do just the crisscross on each peak. So I've turned my blanket around. Here is the stitch that I just did. So I've put, I'll put my hook back down through the center. And I'll grab that yarn. Now you can see, because I went through the center where this original yarn started, it's kind of made this funny loop. And so I'm just going to take my hook and I'm just going to twist it before I start. And that will just kind of make that not so loose. And I need to make sure I'm heading to the right peak, which I guess technically it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to be looking for this right here. And I will just continue. So you can see that when I twisted, that kind of took up that gap. And so now I can just head towards my next peak. So I have finished this side from the center out. I ended the same way with just a loose slip stitch and cut a long tail. And so right now I have the line that goes down through the center and then back to the other side with the long tail on this side. So I will work to finish this out, and then I'll show you how cute this looks with this added little detail. So I'm ready to add the pom-poms, and remember I just loosely slip stitch, so I'm going to make sure that this loop comes to the top of the corner, and then I'm just going to go through that corner and just make a knot to kind of secure that. And I think I'm just going to do 2 just to keep that secured. So here are the pom-poms I bought, and I will just put my needle through to the center and pull it down. Go back down, kind of over, not in the same spot so it won't pull out. And then I'll just come up in the center of that corner. And then I'm going to go back up through that corner. And I'm going to do that once again, go up to the top of the pom-pom and then down. Come out that corner. And then this is the front of the blanket, so I'm going to put this towards the back. And I'm going to knot it a few times just to secure it. And then I'm just going to weave it in a few spots, kind of back up to that center of the corner. Then I'm going to put it up through one more time. Give it a little tug. And then cut that off. So let me finish the rest and we'll call this blanket done.